Okay, I'm gonna skip over. We'll wait a few more minutes for Phil. Tax collection. Okay, website, Patrick.
Yeah, so the website looks good. There was actually quite a bit of interest in this meeting from nobody showing up to it. It's I had a couple of people that were going to show up, but we had I'll bring up the stats real quick. We had a spike on the second when I posted it. And I'm posting now to nextdoor.com and to Facebook as a CSI group that started up. Those seem to be where everybody's hanging out, so I've started posting things just to there, and I tweeted it out. We had over the past 30 days, roughly 100 visitors, mostly around the archive, so people have been digging into what we've seen. And the next highest was just the notes about this meeting. There's been, I think, a lot of people going back and looking at some of the. There's a little dust up on Facebook about security, and I basically said we've talked about this for 6 months in very open meetings that we couldn't have been more forthright in the agendas and when they were and stuff like that. And I think some people took that to heart and went back and looked at minutes and looked at some videos. So that's about it for our website. It's looking good. Amish is really taking care of most of all the nuts and bolts stuff. I go to do something that's already done.
Except for this meeting. I didn't get a chance to post the materials, but I'll post them as soon as after the meeting's over.
And I haven't sent you the notes yet, so I'll do that. So.
Do you want me to hold off on the social media topics of interest until we talk about crime and security? Because that's mostly what they were about.
Is that what it ties into?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That's all right. Lisa Unity, your bookkeeper report real quick.
Sure, we can do that.
While we're waiting.
We can also hit that tax collection report if you want to
Okay.
do that. Okay, so the bookkeeping report, just the paycheck portion of the segment of the meeting. This particular, you see, we're not transferring any money. We don't collect any money, M&O taxes into this one. This time of the year is not the time of the year that you are in a surplus of utility refunds, so there's no check from Denton 1A. We wrote 2 checks at the last meeting, sorry. Checks the 53, 45, and 46. They were on your minutes from last meeting to Eniot and Guy for going to the AWBD conference. And then we are reimbursing Guy in check 5347 for additional expenses. And I actually have another handwritten check for us to consider along with these. Check number 5356 to Eniot, also for AWBD expenses and for an additional day of service when you met with that other representative. The check is $345.44. That's not shown on your listing here. We have regular paychecks for today, and you said Noel's going to be a few minutes late, so I don't think we'll be voiding any. Just standard bills to your consultants. And then we are writing 1 check to Denton 1A for $68,340.53. That's for October, November, and December. We have not trued up August and September. We were invoiced for those amounts. The August one was actually invoiced before, and we'd had those questions that were still lingering. In talking with the auditors, they're going to, the invoices for August and September were based on the original financial statements. There, of course, will be adjustments for the auditing report through 9/30. So they're going to make all the adjustments, come up with the number, and tell us what it is to true up those final 2 months, looking at the entire year, what the whole year was, what we paid. So I believe that invoice was in the neighborhood of $38,000. So we'll go ahead and we will pay whatever balance is due on August and September when the audit is complete.
So that's essentially the same process we followed last year.
Essentially, and I think that'll be a good process going forward because I still had questions that were lingering on that, but then we will let the audit finish because once that happens, then we don't have to go back and true up a second time. It's all just done once and we write the check. But this keeps us current through December, which is the most recent financial statement, most recent invoice, because we know we're going to owe something for that, and we'll kind of just pay those, true up at the end.
But Phil, you're okay with us taking that approach for those?
Yeah, and I think the method that we've done, I think the settlement agreement says that we just take out of the account, which we've never done, I don't think. And so instead of you writing us a check, and so, I'm fine with that.
Okay, good.
Yeah, as long as it gets replaced and balanced accurately, so that'll be fine. So this third page of the report, which is the page 50 of the whole PDF, 170,000 in property taxes for M&O portion. That gives us 622,000 in that account overall. Some of it's in CDs. Your easement revenue, 97,242. And right after I finish the report and send it to everybody, the check for $23,460 rolls in, which puts that balance right at 120,000. You only need 132. It's 75 and 62, and I've looked at this a few times. So you only need about 17,000 more dollars to true this to catch up or to be able to make the final 2 payments. And then after that, all of the collections after that will be yours to keep. Your first quarter of last year, the check was right at $17,000. So then every payment after that, so you might only receive one more check before you've completely funded it, and then it'll be yours. Capital improvement, of course, we have that one. Your debt accounts, Wilmington Trust has opened up 3 accounts related to your Series 2015 refunding. You see there the $458,000 reserve and then the admin expense account. They're actually showing $62,000. I don't think they've paid out all of the expenses. Your amount wasn't really included there. We definitely haven't gotten a check back.
I forgot
But-
the check.
Oh,
They,
you have it.
after I sent the email to them telling them to make it to the district, they made it to SK Law.
Okay.
So I have the check for my legal fees.
Okay.
I forgot it.
Okay. Well,
I will send
well,
it
if
to
it's
you, 'cause
payable to you, do you want to just give us a
Fran-
credit?
Fran was going to issue a check directly to the district.
Oh, okay.
And I was supposed to bring it today,
No problem.
and I forgot.
Okay.
So what we're talking about, approximately
You have
$12,000
like 12,000.
of my legal fees that the district has paid were related to the refunding bonds. There was surplus monies from the refunding bonds, so the trustee agreed to reimburse the district for those fees. So they mistakenly issued the check to our firm instead of the district. So we'll be issuing a check to y'all for about the same $12,000 to reimburse the operating account. So we sent an invoice and they approved it. I think I copied Guy and Lisa on that.
So we talked about last time, you weren't sure if you could do it, but. we
Yes,
found out we could do
everything's
it.
been
Okay,
approved.
Okay.
So I sent them copies of my invoice and highlighted all the time entries and everything, and they were good.
Good.
So
So that's the 48,000 if you're looking on page 4 of the report, which is page 51 of the PDF. That's the 48,000 that came from.
and whatever's left over in probably another 3 months will go into the debt service account for the Series 2015 refunding bonds.
So we've already started building up a small surplus in that account.
Well,
We don't
and-
keep one- we're required to by our
Yeah.
trust indenture for that, but there'll be a little extra.
Yeah, this time they're only doing one collection account for all of it. They're not
Okay.
splitting, which
Okay.
would be very hard to maintain, but yeah, they're doing only one collection account. So we'll still get the extra 5% every year, and then that 48 will be just,
So hopefully we
gravy.
can pay off everything a year early.
Yeah,
When the time
yeah.
comes.
So you'll still be accumulating a good portion of your final payment. Okay. Property taxes, 87.9% as of January. There were some decent deposits the first few months of the year, so I don't think this report reflects early February postings. They may or may not just be deciding to ding people for abusing the 31st being on a Sunday, who knows?
Well, okay, so most of the political subdivisions, since the 31st was on the weekend, they're accepting payments that were postmarked on Monday. So what my tax assessors are telling me is they have thousands of tax payments that haven't even been processed this week. So don't be too alarmed if you see a low collection rate for January 31st, because
Historically, we've been better than that.
Yeah, and I think it had to do with, they had all of these reports posted on Monday. So they cut off the date early. I mean, it was posted by like 1 PM on Monday.
okay.
And if it's posted that early, that tells me they finished the reports last week. So they were not taking that into
They haven't
consideration.
opened all the payments and posted.
So I did go look online and I do see decent deposits in the last few days, which tells me that at least the collections are there, if not the report reflecting it. You see your 84-cent tax rate, which that hasn't changed. Down there at the bottom, you see the 1.45 million, which will be your 2015 estimated tax number from Louisville, which is a 76.21 tax rate. That's what we'll be looking at come the summer. You have your normal operations activity. It's a low time of the year, so there's not a lot of information there.
Any curiosity, what is the tax rate in Louisville these days? Does anybody know?
It is 44.
Okay.
Actually, there's another piece of paper later on in here. It's like 44.6 or something here,
Yeah, so
0.8.
it's 45 or something.
So the brand new debt service page, because I know you spend a ton of time reading the debt service page. You can actually see your total of only $15 million left to pay, and only through 2025. All that reduction. So happy. Okay, 3 months year to date through December. Only 88% of utility revenue, just less water usage, lower billing slightly than was anticipated, but the tax revenue falling a little sooner through December just makes the numbers look a little off. But as of next month, it's all balanced again. It's just a timing difference. Only 90% of your budget for the direct expenses, water, sewer, streets, have all been expended. And then you are over on your more indirect items, a lot of that being slightly, not a whole lot of any, a little bit of professional fees. I mean, it's only $11,000. So the tax appraisal fees is a timing item. So actually, yeah, I think you're actually under budget on almost everything. So both 1A and 1B stuff. So unless you have any particular questions for me, that is all I have on bookkeeping.
Where was it you mentioned about our bonds being done? Where was that?
In the PDF, it is on page 54 of the PDF. It's the 7th page of the bookkeeping report.
Okay, thank you.
And it says schedule of debt service obligations at the top.
Any questions for Lisa on the bookkeeper's report? A motion to approve?
Yep.
Guy, second?
Thank you.
Yeah. All in favor?
Yeah.
Okay, that's right.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to Phil now that I have all of y'all here.
Sorry.
That's okay, don't worry.
I'm finished, so you guys missed it.
You're not getting off that easy.
Yeah, well,
so-
you're here, so.
Phil misses his dinner party. You've got, it's on you, man.
Exactly.
Trust me, I totally understand an
Yeah.
angry wife, so I will make sure that he gets home in time, so.
So what I might do is go over just the financial report, and then we can talk about the police patrol maybe at the end. I think it's page 6 on your screen is the summary revenue and expenses per district. You know, obviously we're 25% through the year, and so you can see the revenues collected as a percentage of the budgets. Expenses, again, we're 25% through the year. If there are no questions, we'll go to page 7, which is the executive summary. Again, this page is revenue only. The top is per district, which we've seen that on the first page. The second talks about the different revenue sources compared to last year versus this year and the difference in each category. The graph shows water and sewer broken out last year versus this year. In water, we're 19.99% ahead in the first 3 months of this year over last year. I would say 6% of that is construction water that we're collecting through 1A through the meters. And so that's a little bit of an aberration, but still, if you back that out, you're 13, almost 14% ahead. Permits we'll go into a little bit more deeply, but you can see the straight line as an average of our budget, a straight line average. You can see the actual for last year and the first 3 months. And then taxes, Lisa's discussed that with you. Page 8 are expenses. And we're 25% through the year. Last year we were 21.54 spent. This year through 3 months we're 20.69. Page 9 is the water report. Water revenue broken out per district, water and sewer. You can see that, you know, the water revenue is about 6% lower than what was budgeted, and the sewer is about 4% lower than what was budgeted through 3 months. Going to page 10, which is the graph, kind of our trending model, if you will, first 3 months. On the left is at the top for water revenue is last year versus this year. So we're 4.1% ahead in strictly water revenue. If you compare this year's actual to the budget, we're an average of 1.24% ahead of our budget, and which equals $49,000. So if we continued that trend through the year, we would finish at $4,008,000. The same trending for sewer, we're 1.4 or 1.5% lower than the year before. We're 0.56 ahead of our budget, which would be a whopping $3,400 over our budget. But I think our trending for percentages, which is in the center of each of the page, seems to hold true. It held true for 2013, 2014. And so I'm thinking that it's fairly consistent with previous years as far as the collection of water, assuming you have similar weather. And down here, you got water connections for the month of December this year compared to last year, 196 more water, 128 more sewer. The average temperature and the rainfall for the month compared to last year. And then page 11 is the activity report, and I'll run through that quickly. You may note over here is a new exhibit that this is a connectivity map that we're beginning that shows we're using the same nomenclature that the city of Louisville uses on their maps for trails and parks, and so some of these are on the Louisville map for connectivity to Louisville. We've identified parks in green, existing trails. And so it's really just the beginning. In looking back at the connectivity plan that was supposedly available, it was so antiquated, it didn't show the residents up here with the park, the commercial that you know here. This shows you the site plan for the first phase that will probably connect somehow through this creek and then up to Discovery eventually, so that this residential could come under the railroad track and come down and visit the parks and the retail. And then we are looking at the connectivity between these districts and somewhere along in here. So this, what I asked the architect to do, or engineer, is this is what I would call existing conditions with some of the city of Louisville markings on it. From an activity standpoint, I'll jump over here. Kroger is pretty close to opening. Their gas station has already gotten a certificate of occupancy, so they could be in operation anytime.
They're selling gas already.
Mhm.
People are talking about, yeah.
And so the 3 retail buildings probably will be leased by the time they're finished. I mean, you have Payway, Zoe's, I can't name them all, but so those retail tenants are pulling permits and wanting to do tenant finish even before the shell's finished almost. Studio Grill, as you know, is expanding and under construction. Most of the spec retail where Rockfish and the pizza and the beer place are pretty much leased. 30 of the lots over here are sold. Out of 370, 30 were sold the first month. All of the retail up here is under contract and will probably close by March for various retail users.
Owned by, who's gonna be owning those?
Third party.
So it's
Brights.
sold to them?
The Brights may have one spec building that has Starbucks in it, but that'd be on 1 acre out of 20. And so you've got iShine Car Wash, you have started construction. You've got 2 spec buildings by third parties that are leased. One of them has Potbelly Sandwich in it. And then the other side, I don't know if who the tenant is.
Is that true of Kroger and the other stores, or Target, for example? Are they owned by Brides or is it owned by?
No.
by you? What is-
Really, none of the Kroger is owned by Bright's, none of the Target's owned by Bright.
I'm talking about the land.
No.
They're completely
They're out,
owned by the. Okay.
right, except for maybe one acre out of the 20 up here.
Okay, so that's the strategy. Everything is
Yeah,
sold. to the
yeah.
developer.
And then they have some retail working on this corner, that might be, a small anchor, plus some other retail, through here. And so I see that being developed. This could be developed too. So I would say this fiscal year, you're going to see all of this developed, with retail tenants that are paying sales tax and, a lot of activity.
So we can hire 2 more police.
Absolutely, yeah. And then Discoveries, this is Discovery, which is the first portion of the realm, and that's well under construction. Crown Center is the office park over here, the first portion of it. The south portion, the paving is in, and so they already have user activity for office tenants that they're working with here. A medical building should start construction of about an 8,000 square foot. I think it's a spec medical building here. Just in passing, I did meet with the head of TxDOT. First time I met her, and she's very nice. And she met me on site here, and so they're going to clean up this intersection for us.
What's that cross street?
This is Windhaven and 544.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, no, this one. Yeah, I'm at this one. Windhaven's the one that's pretty,
Mhm.
With the schools across the street. So at Windhaven and 544 has some asphalt. So they are projecting that this will be completely done in 36 months from acquiring all of the right of ways, which are very close to doing.
County said like 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, that it's all approved and done. So it's taking them.
Well, they've got
It was
to
like
they got to
4 years ago.
finalize the right of way with 2 people, which is in the process of being done, and they've already let the contract with the contractor out of Florida, and they think that they'll have this done in 36 months, which would be pretty big.
A question for you.
Cleanup, is it Windhaven and,
544.
so it is, because you were pointing
Yeah.
over here, but it's.
Yeah, I'm
really
sorry,
this
it's
one.
Windhaven.
So
You know where the
that's
asphalt and
been torn up for years, right?
Right.
So they're gonna.
Right.
What does cleanup means? They're gonna come in and fix up the road
They-
temporarily?
they're not going to do anything that is permanent because they're going to be tearing it up.
Yeah.
But they, and she was a head district person, and so
So
it was
they're
funny.
gonna-
The day before I met her on site, they cleaned it up a little bit.
Yeah.
It's funny how you can't get them to return the call, but before the director shows up, they threw some gravel in there. So we'll see.
They'll do temporary.
They're going to do
patches.
temporary patching, and and so we'll see what they'll do.
What is that? Is that Castle Hills to the,
That-
a little bit more to the left?
that-
That area there,
yeah.
what is that?
That's Ara. It's an apartment complex.
Oh, I'm sorry,
It is.
then to the other side of it, they're building houses to the right of it, a little bit.
Yeah, all this is not part of.
So
Castle
what
Hills.
city is that?
It's a tract that Darling Homes,
I think it's Lennar also.
Lennar, yeah.
Lennar.
Lennar Homes bought this whole tract, and so they are doing homes in here that are not a part of the district.
What, is that the colony, is that Louisville? What is?
I don't know. It's in Louisville. The utilities are provided by Louisville, I think, but I don't know any of the details.
And to the right of it, is that Castle Hills, that area there?
Well, this is the school property, so that's Castle Hills. The senior housing is not. The school, I think, is. These schools are. And I think this is school property here.
Yeah.
So this track right here is not in part of this. And I guess this whole track, these tracks aren't either.
Or not Castle Hills?
Is there any plan to connect that Windhaven across the
Yeah,
railroad tracks?
I have an update, and the letter's a three-page letter, and so what I'm having done is kind of a timeline so that I could show you, the letter's detailed from an engineering and stuff like that. So I'm going to have a timeline probably by the next board meeting and part of that too is that it could be that some knowing that we're waiting on the railroad, and the railroad really only moves if there are residents that are calling their senators and congressmen to move it along. So just,
So is there a shared expense, Campbell, with the district and railroad, or
no.
the district?
No, it's a Louisville, TxDOT. There's a water line that's a Louisville water line, and there's an Upper Trinity water line that all is part of the, paying to connect this. So I'll share that
Next month.
lengthy email, but I'll give you a timeline that's pretty legible. Most of these houses are by the medical are either under construction, lots are sold, or even some of them are occupied. This looks like it's going to happen in April, which is a burn track, which would be another 144 lots.
Which one is that?
This one is on Park and Stanridge.
Where the
Oh,
homeless
so-
people were.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so
Yeah.
that wasn't
right?
part of Castle Hills before, so it was bought recently, right?
It is under contract to close in March. And Guy, last time you'd asked me, to have our engineer look at the engineering for this, kind of the impact, and here's a letter from him saying that, that there'll be no negative impact tying into the existing stuff.
And that's gonna be, that is what is closing that patch of land there, is that going to be, what district is that? going to be?
District C.
C, okay.
And do you know that,
Pardon?
with that entrance at Stanbridge, do you know if they're gonna kind of beef that up a little bit?
The entrance from Sandwich will not be across from the church, it'll be across from the school. And yes, it'll be a 4-lane, not divided, but I think it's a 4-lane,
What?
4-lane street. And there'll be an entrance here and there'll be an entrance here.
Okay.
This District C,
Pardon?
is it like a par 3 golf course going in there, or is it going to be actual housing and stuff? It's
Just all golf. All house.
okay.
What determines what goes in what district? What is the deciding factor?
Part of it is bonding capacity. I mean, C has additional bonding capacity. And school district, as far as I know, everything that's within Castle Hills, what I would say south, goes to Louisville schools. And that's part of working this out with the cities.
So District C expands now to incorporate that land, to include that land.
So that house that's in there is gonna go away?
Oh, yeah.
I've never seen a house. I've
Yeah,
never
there's a
seen
house in there. I've never
It's
seen
a
it.
dirt road.
Yeah, I've seen the dirt
house
road.
back there.
Dirt road. Yeah,
And
where
there's
the
a
homeless
house.
people are.
Yeah,
that's right.
but there is a house in there.
What I mean,
I go down there and ask if they'll pay.
It's a,
So,
camp with them sometimes. It's a,
um,
there's a cell tower over there too, or something.
Mhm.
It's a big tower.
So that's pretty much it. The paving is going well for the 93 lots over here. Most of the 64 villas are sold. That's really it. And in B, last month, there were 15 permits, and they're listed on page 12 as to what they were. You go to page 13. Is our permit revenue model. Again, the straight line is the average of our budget, just a straight line average. The first 3 months are shown 2015. We're $130, $458 ahead of this year versus last year, the first 3 months. On the right is the actuals against a straight line average for a trend, and we are 90,613 ahead of that average for the first 3 months. Page 14, available lots, which really hadn't changed. When that closes, we'll add the additional lots, that are in the burn track. Page 15 is the lot sales. So far this year, we've done 39 lots. Last year at this time, we've done 29, so we're 10 ahead of last year at this time. And that's pretty much the financial report. I can jump into the police, or you want to wrap my report up and then I'll do the security?
Are there any questions on the,
Yeah, I have a couple of
on
questions.
1A's report?
On the trails you were talking about, Phil,
Mhm.
what are the next steps? What do you do from this? I wasn't really clear on where you go from here.
This is just to put existing conditions down there. And then I think it would be to see, where, and there's probably 180,000 in connectivity fees that have been collected since 2011, which, I think the overall connectivity is a lot bigger than that to connect everything. But I think it's to get the existing conditions like this down, and then to look at some options, for connecting or improving, whether you widen, you widen a path or you connect one that's not existing.
You said there's money from connectivity.
Mhm.
So I'm not familiar with that.
It's part of the permit fee, and in 2011, it was agreed that a connectivity fee would be charged for, for bikes and sidewalk, future biking.
So when a permit is issued, there's a fee on there that goes to connectivity.
Right.
And then that money is put into developing trails.
It will be. I mean,
So the money has been collected since 2011.
2011.
And when you say connectivity, means the house connectivity, not connecting park connectivity, right?
No, it means it's for bike trails, biking trails and walking paths.
Park and bike trails?
Yeah.
But connecting them, you mean house connection or connecting the parks and stuff? Right? The word
You mean
connection.
putting concrete on the ground to make
Connect.
more trails, right?
Yeah.
And
Or
that's what-
improving existing ones,
Yeah.
like, and so then it would be to get existing conditions and then to look at kind of options and price some options out.
Okay. And then you said there's a couple of $100,000 collected to date.
180.
180. And then is there I think you mentioned something about connecting to Louisville trails
Well,
ultimately.
what we've done is taken their future trail, they show this as a connection point and this is a connection point. And so they show, the nature reserve up here and kind of how you connect to some of their future. And this is shown on their future connectivity or their future hike and bike and walking paths. And so I think unquestionably it's trying to get on the same page. We're even use some of the same nomenclature and, as Louisville, so that there's some continuity, if you will.
So how wide are those main arteries called connections? How wide are they? Are you talking about?
These,
Yeah.
well, existing, they're, this is a 4-lane street. There's no bike. They're probably not even sidewalks. This is, this is future.
So I guess where I was going with that, Phil, is
Mhm.
it's good to connect into Louisville. We shouldn't forget Carrollton is right next door as well, and they have trails that it may be easier to connect into those guys. So I would be interested to see how that lays in on top of this.
Yeah.
Colony has some nice trails around there. I mean, it's a little bit hard to get over the highway, but there's some nice trails around Lakewood.
Yeah.
How much did you say was the fee for for this connection per house? The fee that you've been collecting since 2011? Roughly, what is the number?
That has been collected to date is in the 180,000. I don't know how much per house or per commercial and,
So then are you putting together a plan on how that money is going to be allocated? Will we get to see that, or how does that process work?
you'll get to see it.
Can I ask a question about that? There's a lot of these trails, I think they're talking about something, these black asphalt trails that kind of cut through the neighborhood, different places. Some of them are pretty nice, some of them are a little rough right now, and some of them are just really not very pretty because they're just right next to people's garbage cans and stuff. Can any of the money be used to allocate some beautification project or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, that's what it's for. And so it's a priority and, where does your money go? If the connectivity between E and across the golf course is $1 million and you can improve those asphalt trails for 50,000, then maybe, you improve the trails. If Atmos is going to come through and disrupt those asphalt trails, then you defer it.
Yeah, we have a couple of those right now.
Right.
We're talking about, I kind of avoid some of these right now because they're just, they're not very pretty to walk on because it's all
Yeah.
the traffic.
Some of them are playing dangerous.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. at night.
Yeah. No,
Now, is
So
this, I'm sorry, the HOA did some of the original ones, right? Or who did some of the pads, the asphalts that are there right now? Was it done by HOA,
I don't
years ago?
know.
Is this fund part of the HOA or are they separate? What is the?
The fund,
Yeah.
no, it's separate. It's held by 1A. And,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
so the district, okay. So
Yeah.
there's going to be some coordination with HOA as to if they have funds or, I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, I'm getting a map, I'm getting existing conditions, I'm looking at logical improvements, then I'll price them out, and then, I'm just kind of taking it a step at a time. The association, I don't really look to them for any money. I don't really have much conversation with them. I don't really expect them to, but I think that they'll be aware of it. And if they want to participate in something, then, certainly we'll give them every opportunity to,
But do they consider those being part of the HOA responsibility or not? That's the part you know what I'm saying?
I don't know. I mean, I'd have to ask Rhoda.
How does this tie in with Louisville's 2015 plan?
Well, those blue lines you'll find on Louisville's 2015 plan.
Okay,
So we're just
showing them on a Castle Hills map.
showing them on a Castle Hills map that are part of their 2015 plan. And I have no idea whether they're saying it's 2020 or whether it's a bike or whatever. We're just trying to get ours down, kind of coordinate. And
So at least everyone's
yeah,
kind
and
of
then
thinking about that there's, need to look at the regional picture on this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
One thing to note, and it's probably premature, I've had 2 districts receive $400,000 Texas Park and Wildlife grants for hike and bike trails.
Right.
And then one of my districts just received $75,000, and we have grant writers. There's a company out of Huntsville that's been pretty good on it. They charge $4,000 to $5,000 to put together a grant project, so there's money out there.
We ought to give me their name.
Okay. I'll send that to you.
And because I think, as Bruce has pointed out, you need a plan first before you can make application to something. And so then you need a plan that has some, and if it is connected to Carrollton and Louisville, it gets more points.
It does, if you
And-
tie in.
yeah, and
if you
so-
partner with other
Right.
political subdivisions, nonprofits.
Right.
It's fairly comprehensive, but there's money out there, and they just started back up the program this past year.
Yeah.
So, and the grants were awarded last week on this latest cycle, and they do it once to 2 times a year, depending on funding.
Yeah, and I
I'll
think
send that
that
to you.
I had looked at that grant program and it started in 2013, and then it took about 2 years to be awarded.
Yeah,
And-
it's been on and off. They discontinued it in 2011, I think. And then I had one district get $1 million for Trails of Trees, where we put hike and bikes and we planted over 400 trees around our Wisaka. So
Yeah.
it's just a source of funding, that if this is something that the community wants,
Yeah.
for a relatively inexpensive cost, I think it's a good use. And I think GrantWorks charged us $4,000 for our last grant application. So,
Yeah, I'd like to talk.
okay, I'll send that to you.
Let me ask this, Phil. Is this an opportunity to maybe bring in some of the community members? I know we have several master gardeners in the area. I think they would love to be part of an advisory group or something to talk with you or whoever about this project. Any interest in that at all?
Not at this point.
Okay.
I mean, I think that it would diffuse any progress at this point.
Okay.
Would love to, at the right time.
I just throw it out there.
Yeah.
I'm not one of them.
Yeah. No, I think,
I'm not in to be on a committee.
No. I think it'd be invaluable.
Guys want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but it'd be invaluable at the right time.
Yeah, I think they
Yeah,
would
right
give them
now
a sense
we're
of
just-
pride in the community
yeah.
and stuff. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So what I'm hearing you say is ask you every month.
Every other day.
Auto email Phil, got it.
Any other questions, guys?
Yeah, I did have one other. I got this notice in the mail about
Oh, yeah.
recording issues. Can you give us the background?
Yeah, it was an oversight as far as reporting levels. And I think part of it is the transition of our new public works director. But
Did we drink some bad stuff or what?
Nope. no, it was all up to snuff and it was done. It just wasn't, the paperwork wasn't done. So you've got to, as Julianne, you've got to report yourself. So we reported ourselves and
I just sent one out because one of my districts did the wrong lead test. And so we had a couple residents on, we have lead in our water. No, we have no lead in our water if you read the letter, but we didn't properly test for it. And once we discovered it, we did. There was no lead, but we're required to send it.
yeah, and we've done all our testing and it was done timely and it was,
But they still require you to send a letter to every resident saying that.
TCQ requires that it
Yeah.
be sent out.
Even though the test numbers were good, but you didn't
Yeah.
report it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you record the number, your public works director records the numbers, what, in a
Every day.
logbook or a?
Yeah, I mean, we have sheets that they record the testing, when it was taken, all that. And we had all that.
Yeah.
And it was
So
just,
it's actually paper records?
Yeah.
Do we add anything or do anything with the water that we get? We just test and make sure it's good, right?
Right.
But otherwise.
we don't
the
do
level-
any treating. Right.
Unless there's some problem, but it's rare that you would ever find something that water being sent to us.
Yeah,
is
we
not
just,
good.
we don't do any treating ourselves. We
And if
test
there's a
it.
problem,
daily.
have you ever guys found problems that you had to report?
Not that I've heard of, no,
Okay.
no.
But it's always levels are good and you just test it. Okay.
Yeah,
Yes,
that was
Bill,
actually a letter, it was just a letter to you.
Yeah.
No one else received it.
If there was a problem, I guess it'd be a boil notice like there was when it split, when we lost the pipes, boil notice, and it'd be treated upstream and we'd just boil until it all went through the system or something like that, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if something like that happened, but, all our tests were good. And
Yeah.
they were, all the documentation was there, just like it was supposed to be. It just missed the deadline to report it. So we've got to,
So really, this is a verification process. It's really, that's all it is.
Yeah.
We just verifying the water is good.
Yeah, it's kind of an important step.
Yeah, I know it is. It's just verification.
So one other thing, Phil, I've seen more recycled water covers, the purple colored
Yeah.
boxes going in. Not necessarily now, but can we get a sort of a paragraph or two or an update from you on what's happening with those?
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be now. Maybe at the next meeting you can give us a.
yeah, I'll do that. Yeah, I'll do that.
You want to talk about security, Phil?
I do, yeah. Unless Guy has one more question that
I'll save it for next time.
yeah.
You really don't want to go that dinner party.
I'm gonna give him his cell phone. Yeah. So this, I think I have enough. And I don't think I gave out my last one. So let me just kind of highlight it. Attached, this is straight from Chief Kerba. And it shows on the left covert patrol, on the right traffic enforcement. It shows the dates, what happened, the mileage driven, the number of hours clocked. And then on the right was traffic enforcement. And so for the month of January, they did 20 hours of covert control. They drove 359 miles. They had 14 calls. And traffic enforcement, they were there 12 hours, drove 122 miles, and they had 21 stops. And so we will get this each month. And then I had a conversation that I'm recanting here on the front page. And I asked him, the first question, what can you tell from the first month's metrics? And he said, that he's pleased with the number of contacts by his officers. And so that they made so many touch points was good, either in stopping people or, and he also was pleased with the amount of mileage driven. So they made the rounds. Said it's really too early to draw any conclusions from just the first month. No surprise. I said, do you think the plan needs modification? He's going to use the same model for February, just because it's too early to start tweaking it. He did think by March and April, he will have what he called target sites, that he will deploy additional staffing, whether that's what I call a stakeout, or whether that's covert patrol, or whether that's
So is that sort of as the officers get a feeling for what's going on in the neighborhood?
Right. And so he said that he'll have, he said by March, but certainly by April, he'll have targeted sites for additional patrols, and that he'll include the number of citations. It's not on the January report, but we'll see that. I asked him about his ability to staff with off-duty officers. He said every spot that he's posted has been filled. So that's favorable.
All the open spots they have filled those?
They posted to see who wants to work overtime.
Oh, for us, not filling their.
Right. And so every time he posted an availability, he had filled. So, as he expands, if he does these target sites and it requires more officers, I think he's optimistic that if he posts it, then.
What does calls mean? So while they were patrolling, calls came in means what? Calls from who? It says 14 calls, for example?
I think that's where his officers, because it was a covert patrol, so his officers called in and said, suspicious vehicle,
They don't engage, they just observe and call in, right?
Right, yeah.
Or the one 18 of those is my fault.
Yeah.
And then 21 stops, what does it mean? Means tickets they gave tickets?
Well, that's what I was saying. And next month, we'll know if there were 14 tickets given or 21 tickets.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
this 21, was it 5 of them were people that were about to, they were criminals or?
No, 21 of them, it's for traffic enforcement, either
police
running a
traffic,
stop sign
okay.
or speeding
That's right,
or something. And then I asked them about patrolling the parks for suspicious activity, and they're doing that. They're investigating their ability to enforce district rules. We talked about that last time. But if they see suspicious activity at the park, they stop. Interestingly, they had drug and alcohol violations. None of them involved minors.
That's good.
And then the IRA, if you look on the map, number 645 is you. And so out of 93 calls for service where a policeman was dispatched, 49 of them were false.
Wow.
Is that 93 calls in the month of January?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's alarm calls, right?
Alarm calls,
49 false alarms.
So, but
49 out of 93.
okay, it sounded like 911 calls and they were false, but okay. False.
So 93 alarm calls, 49 were false, or 93 calls total, 49 were false alarms.
I read this as 49 out of 93 were false alarms.
So 93 calls and half of them were.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And we got charged $60 per of that, right?
Right.
That's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, it's insane that they charge. It's insane that we can't be better about that as a
It's
neighborhood.
really good to have an odd number, but now we know.
Yeah. And, this is something that, this was a report, even though I'm sorry, Lisa, I did not do that intentionally.
Contact.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So,
You guys go ahead and pass those down here.
yeah.
Before we go to that, Bill,
Yeah.
on their covert patrol time, so they're patrolling from 6 to 10 in the evenings or 6 to 10 in the evenings usually.
Now, covert means when they think it will be the best. And
Okay, because
they're
they
gonna,
have on their assigned times, their 4-hour block is 6 to 10 on 4 of those days, 3 of those days.
That's anti-covert.
well, it's an unmarked car and the policemen are in.
Okay.
They're not.
Will they be do we know, has there been criminal activity later than that? Or do we know any of the stats? Has there been a lot of feedback?
So there's been actually, it's always funny because there's been some people saying, yay, I'm seeing more officers, some people going, those guys are giving me tickets and they're just picking on the rich people in the neighborhood, you know, it's ridiculous. So, you know, let's lit up the airwaves a little bit. There has been, like last week, there was somebody egged like every car more on the face. So it was like 6, 8, 9 cars, something like that were parked out there, all got egged. You know, more ding dong ditching going on, you know, 3 a.m, ding dong pounding, so pounding on doors at 3 a.m, they're running away when somebody gets up. But it's the same old. So it's hard to say, is it better or worse? I think it's just new. I think we just don't know yet.
Yeah, and they're gonna
happen.
try different times of the day and night, and they're gonna rotate it and see if, you know, and as the city manager, you know, Donna Barron told me, you know, I was asking her kind of the same question. She said, I have absolute confidence in Russell Curbo as chief of police that he's figuring it out. And you know, and so whether he does it during the day or does it during the night or early morning, or, you know, he's kind of, I think the first couple of months, he's testing things out and then figure out when the best time to catch the bad guys.
So if you're trying to take care of the teenage mischief and all that stuff, would this covert type activities, you know, try to, you know, stop that a little bit or not? That's the thing that I'm wondering.
Yeah, I think if you look at, you know, some of the description or parkers, you know, suspicious circumstance parkers, suspicious parker, you know, parkers. The last one down there, suspicious vehicle parkers. I think that's some of your park activity where they're parking and drinking the beer, or, you know, and so if they see a suspicious car, you know, they're going to stop it now. You know, they're going to go check it out, and they can arrest them, they can handcuff them, they can
Show them off, nothing else.
Right. Yeah.
So let me ask this question. So there's some of your calls, this is just what the covert patrol called in, because there's nothing in here about alcohol or drugs or anything like that. So I'm assuming from reading this first part, there were things that were done, activity that the police were out here and they did things other than what's listed here.
Yeah, what he had given me, and it, you know, it was just a report for activity.
Okay.
You know, and he was saying that there was drug related, you know, stops.
Okay.
And alcohol related. And I asked him, was it a minor or an adult? Because that was part of the question last time. And he said, no, it was no minors, it was adults. So.
And they wouldn't be listed in covert patrol because the officers themselves found them in the marked car, I guess. That's what's going on?
Well, I think those guys pull up behind a car, when, you know, and if there's someone in it, they stop and ask them who they are.
So the reason I ask is because I've been very clear about how you feel about posting letters you write stuff out. So I won't do that, but I will summarize this stuff and put it out.
And I can tell you, every board member got this same letter in the last 30 minutes.
Okay.
So, you know,
I get asked hard information about this stuff. If I just show this, I say, well, I don't see anything on here without seeing the context of the drug and alcohol violations, because that's not mentioned back here on this page.
Yeah.
So other board members got, like, did District D directors get the false alarm numbers for their district?
No, he
was special.
You know, it's like, that's the only one that he pointed out.
Okay.
In his email to me, he said, you know,
But because we're high.
but I'll find out the other one, but he just pointed out, you know, that particular one had this many and it was 50% of them were false.
We may really want to consider some sort of fee or something associated with this, because this is money. This is what,
Or we're
60 times
subsidizing.
50. Yeah, we could be using it for other stuff.
Well, in the study, what this is that I passed out is it was kind of a study of 28 cities, and they all had the same issue. And that's the executive summary of what they kind of concluded. And you can tell it's 1, enforcement, it's 2, education. One of the things that was interesting is that it includes talking to the alarm companies and saying, you know, you need to be more diligent about whether this is really a 911 call or not, you know. And frankly, I experienced it at the house. I went home carrying it to burn something, and smoke alarms had gone off, and the police had called me, but I was on the phone.
Yeah.
And fortunately, my wife answered the phone and told them not to send the fire truck, you know? So they can be more diligent about investigating.
And it'd be interesting to see how many of them are repeats. I don't know, do we have that kind of?
I'm gonna dig into this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'll come up with some way to begin to, influence the repeat offenders and, to see how we can reduce that.
Because I know certain cities, they give you 2 or 3, like Plano, for businesses that.
Louisville gives 3.
3, after 3, they.
Yeah.
you know,
So I've had 3
3
or
a year.
15 years that I've been here. I've had cops come once by accident.
Yeah.
That's it.
So,
Yeah, that's fine.
Well, one question I have on here is the one on January the 10th, they were awfully busy on the mileage. They're way over, I don't understand why does this one go 40 miles?
Probably depends how many incidents they run.
Yeah.
Maybe, if they get busy with something.
well, they
I don't
actually
know. I
had,
mean, they're going over 100 miles and everybody else is.
yeah, in one time they actually, someone ran from them and undercover does not pursue a,
Oh, got it. So they're driving. Okay.
yeah, and so they probably pursued him some and then call in and get his license and send,
Okay.
someone else to go pursue it.
Well, what is call
Mhm.
sign? Pardon? This is call sign 695. Is that the
person
undercover?
patrolling
Okay.
probably, or the unit assigned to
Okay.
undercover patrol.
Gotcha.
And what I would ask is, this is the first report.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of it's a learning deal. And as we get better at it, then I'm gonna each month kind of give you a summary of the progress, how many calls, how many miles, how many false calls, more of the districts. I won't just pick on B, but they're the largest offender.
Well, if we deserve to be picked on, we deserve it.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think this is great stuff. I'm excited to see anything. This is good.
Yeah,
Completely.
yeah, and
Really good stuff.
as I said in the last story, I've had a lot of positive that, people are seeing them. There's more presence. So.
I saw them in action.
Oh, did you?
I did.
Yeah.
Stopped 2 cars on King Arthur. I was like, "Ooh."
Thank you, Phil.
Say all King
So
Arthur.
you
now.
weren't,
You
you
want
weren't
your
a
check?
part of the action.
No, no, no.
1A check.
You
or
observe
want
from
to
a
mail?
distance.
That's not the text. I don't know.
I'll take it. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Thanks.
Thanks, Phil.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Take care. See you.
So 11 stops on the 9th.
That's weird. I'm wondering how they actually, what they consider a false alarm, because last week I had a message on my phone and the caller ID said dispatch. And I got off work and apparently my wife had come into the house and missed the turning off security. And they called her right away too, and she said, "Yeah, it was just
I think it's
the
only,
thing."
I think only the cops come.
So on my message, I saw the message. I called them right back, and she was just reading the the history from that. Yeah, there was a overhead garage door or something, and the police were dispatched, and police were dispatched, and my wife didn't tell me anything about that, and so they never came to the house. But I guess I wonder if that's considered a false alarm. Is they dispatch them, but then they get a hold of somebody and they say, "Oh, never mind." I wonder if that's
Well,
considered,
that's what
so-
they might have called and canceled it, and
So I'm wondering if that's considered a false alarm.
And
That's
suspected
Yeah,
what
because
the-
they've already.
I think
Yeah,
that
if they get in there and go in, if they turn around halfway, I would think they would count that.
We contract with the Kaufman County Sheriff's Office for some districts out in Forney, and an officer comes to our meeting every quarter and presents his updates, and he says in the 15 or so years he's been doing this, he said that he has once responded to an alarm call that was dispatched and actually found the house being burglarized at that time. Another time he responded, the house had been burglarized, but the burglar was already gone. He says in all of the other thousands and thousands of calls, he's never once had it be an actual burglar.
Well, I hadn't
Found
thought
no
about that.
evidence
It's all false alarm?
of entry. It's always false alarms.
Well,
He
this-
says,
So this is 49 out of 90 feet. Does that imply that 44 of these calls are actual burglaries or something like
well,
that?
that they couldn't find that it was clearly a false alarm, or that there wasn't someone standing there going, "Oh, my
Never
fault, the dog," or something like that, or I got a call and I called them back, or like he said, they got dispatched to Amisha's house, and then the cops show up at the same time that the never mind call came in from the alarm company.
We did actually have the sensors on the windows. I guess they age, and when the weather changes, they go off. So we had officers call once. We got called by the alarm company. It was like 3 a.m. and we said send the cops out because I don't know what's going on here. It wasn't us. So that probably counted as not a false alarm. It was a legitimate alarm.
Yeah, it wasn't
Wound up
actually
being
a
nothing.
burglary, but it was,
I wonder if that's what it is. 49 times they left and then they didn't go to the house because they got called back, and then the other 44 times maybe they actually went to the decals.
Or
that
they,
figured out
you know, we
what's
said
going
that someone's breaking in and it was actually, you know, the cat chewing on something and it wasn't really a.
Yeah.
you
on.
know.
But anyway, that's
Mhm.
my answer.
But I do know a guy who served on the SWAT team with Daryl Humphreys
Okay.
for Louisville. And I just met up with them earlier, or one day last week, we met up for lunch, but it's like, he was kind of giving a little bit of insight on it, and he said his suggestion, his own personal suggestion, outside of Daryl Humphreys, is that we do need to get another one, because the kids that figure this out, like that one that was down on, next door, down there on the other end, she said Merlin, but I think she means Merlin's Rock down there. Well, that's when they see a car there, all you know, they gotta know is just wait, 20 minutes, it'll be gone, and they've got another couple hours, because they know that this one car can't cover all this time. So maybe this will help us be able to give some more, because it's
Yeah, marked.
because if they're figuring out that there's the unmarked cars.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the hours. That seems
Yeah.
early evening doesn't seem like the prime time for mischief and
Especially now
criminal
that it's gonna start
activity.
getting lighter.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more like 10.
And
10 to
in
4,
some
10
of
to
our
6.
districts, it didn't take long for the criminals to figure it out to where they just moved to the daytime. And especially if you have,
Well, and we've had that too, so.
they're very good at figuring out, the one that is actually bad, and I'm surprised that Louisville hasn't addressed it more, is there should be some ordinances about when the construction crews can work.
Oh,
And it probably,
I think that's in the deed restrictions.
it should be,
here,
it's almost
isn't it?
always in deed restrictions, and then if not, and it usually closely follows whatever your ETJ city is. So they're not allowed to work in those hours before or after, and if they do want to work, they have to get a variance, like a early construction pour or some kind of like concrete related thing. But other than that, these guys aren't allowed to be staying here working late on the houses, because the builders want them there.
well, that's what happened that one night that I called, was they were supposedly in there working, and it was like 8 o'clock at
And
night.
that's one of those where
Yeah.
you guys can get 1A to talk to the builders.
Yeah.
And, what we had some other districts do when the builders kept abusing it, and we're like, oh, the permitting process is delayed.
Mhm.
Oh, and by the way, we had this other issue, and the
Right.
permitting process is delayed. So
Sure.
it's sort of like here's the thing, if you want your
Yeah,
permits,
exactly.
start following our
Total
rules.
law,
And
yeah.
because it also bothers the homeowners, you don't
Yeah.
need to have construction happening while you're, home
Yeah, I was just starting to pick up again back there early.
I
We
wonder
have our
if it's-
HOAs levy a fine after the first violation, because the builders have to put up a builder deposit with the HOA. And then if they're fined for after hours work, it is taken off of that deposit.
Does it change the end of the day? Does it change for summer versus winter because there's more light, or no? Is it just
No,
same?
it's the market.
Most of my neighborhoods are 7 a.m. during the weekdays, 7 to 7 on weekday, and then 8 to 6 on weekends, I believe, and no work on Sunday.
Okay, because I know sometimes they work until 9 p.m. because of the sun.
Yeah.
Well, that's 1A, and HOA should be enforcing that, because I'm 99%
It's starting to pick up. We
positive
noticed it. It's
that
starting to
would be
pick
in
up
the
again.
deed restrictions.
Behind us.
Well,
We're getting earlier and earlier.
And sometimes the, developer has an incentive to want his builders to, keep moving. I know there'd been quite a problem with a number of contractors who were, home completion was getting delayed because they didn't have enough qualified people to do masonry, to do proper tile work and stuff like that. And so when these companies can get in there, they'll get in there and just try to almost work around the clock. But if you're the cop who's pulling up and a guy is in there messing with the dishwasher or messing with appliances, and he's like, I'm installing it, or am I, you're installing it at 11:30 at night,
Yeah.
or I'm doing this at 11:30 at night versus, taking it out. If the cop isn't going to stick around and pay attention to what the guy does 20 minutes later, well, that brings more crime in there, because that same guy who's in there stealing from the builders is driving by your accidentally open garage and,
Yes.
taking his thieving to another level.
I am excited though overall by the report. I think more detail would be nice and it's coming, but it's interesting to see kind of the highlights of what's going on.
So you're excited?
I am excited. Have I mentioned I'm excited?
I don't
I'm
think
excited.
any police presence is a bad thing.
I mean,
Well, I'd be interested to see the number of citations issued, just because I know y'all are gonna get questions on, is this just a revenue generating mechanism
we already are.
for city of Louisville? So those questions will be coming because it takes.
Well, that and the quota, always comes with, they have to meet their quota,
Yeah.
you know.
They're always
Big
people.
on us.
So we're paying for them to come give us tickets, right? Is that what they're-
We're paying for them to come out there. If they give you tickets, that should
Y'all-
that's
y'all-
a good sense.
We're paid to get.
Y'all will be getting that feedback from the public.
Oh, we
you
have.
know.
Yeah.
Okay, if it hadn't already started.
It started.
Yeah,
Yeah,
this
I would
is a
say-
revenue generating mechanism for the city of Louisville.
I bet if
But
I
they-
looked, then the initial post of somebody complaining the first time was probably on the 9th, because it was the beginning of January. That's when they were out here the first time.
But actually, that complaining is good because then it's telling people, it actually makes the police presence look bigger. Because that person's like, I got a
They're
ticket and I'm
everywhere.
almost never on the street, which means that they're probably, feels like they're flooding the streets.
Well, it's
if-
interesting because they have now people posting, well, there's a cop here, there's a cop there.
Mhm. I'm about to say that.
I'm gonna start posting. There's a cop on my street every day. You know, he's in stealth mode, so you might not see him, but trust me, he's there. You want to go real slow and watch the stop sign on my street. That's
Yeah,
it.
especially right up there, Rick Fire.
Well, that's a posting to be like, happy to see all of the police cars
That's right.
rolling through the neighborhoods at all hours of the day and be like, oh, well, then apparently someone's seeing them and just, whip up.
Being arrested right outside my house.
That's right. I would stay away. I would ding dong it somewhere else.
All those people caught doing bad things in the parks. That's such a good thing to be like, maybe we should go do our bad things in the park. Why is there adults like drinking in a public park at night and be like, isn't there a bridge
It's a
somewhere?
little rendezvous with the neighbor.
They're getting away from their wives, so they're there.
Wow.
You guys,
All right, I'm marking a time. I'm gonna show it to your wife. That's
So next agenda item on that.
6:07.
Maybe you guys need to downsize by
It
like
could be the
two,
women
to
getting
like
off
a
their
bachelor patio crashing.
And yeah, it's turning red there, so we may have been there.
Were you the one that was drinking in the park?
And he goes, and he goes, well, I was.
I don't
But
drink
that,
at all, let alone at home, let alone in the park, so. But I
You
know
don't drink at
people-
home.
But I know
Are you drinking in
people.
the park?
Wow.
Should we move on?
Please do that.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
we also have, and I'm kind of hopscotching around the agenda, discussion of amending the rate order as it relates to our water and sewer rates, and then amending our budget.
And they're completely separate things. Do we want to do the budget first? 'Cause it's
Yeah,
more
that's
than-
what I was gonna ask you. How do you want to approach that? Because, well, if we amend our rates, that'll also go into the budget.
Oh, that's
also.
right.
So,
That is
um,
actually, and this amended budget does take into consideration those amended rates. So let's go ahead and I guess we'll talk about the rates. We did do the tax collection report, right?
We have not done that yet. I
Okay.
skipped back to,
We could probably kill that real fast. So 87.9% collected.
Oh, yeah.
You guys are okay with collecting taxes?
okay,
That was easy.
okay, here we go. Okay, you should have this on your iPads. And Mary brought some copies that we handed
That
out.
was not, the actual rate order was not, I put my recommendation. on
Okay,
it.
and these are our existing rates.
Yeah, and I do have a page in here that does do a comparison of both. So if you are looking in in the PDF, it is on page 63 of the tablet. And the numbers that say current rates should tie to what was just handed out to you.
I'm trying to find $62.
And your proposed rates you see there. You guys
So
want to go
your
with that?
proposal here is to drop the fixed rate
The fixed rates across the board.
and hold the tiered rates exactly the same.
Yes, yeah, your tier rate is still fairly high. It is also a good source of your generator. We could only drop it a little bit and actually have it keep the budget break even, whereas it would be harder to balance your budget and have it be reliable if we drop the tier rate only, because then it's very hard to make sure that your budget stays balanced when you have volatility based on weather, based on usage or things like that. So as your usage has continued to decline, it's actually hard to do that. I would just recommend something we know is good, and it also gives a steady amount to the homeowners while also penalizing higher usage. So keep your tiers the same, and we'll address that at another point, but you're basically giving them a return. And all of this major change, if you're looking at it and going $371 a year, that's not a small amount. That is the refunding. So Julian's $12,000, definitely well spent. And that allowed you to see not only that savings when the taxes, your taxes will be reduced, but then also $75,000 we get to keep. And if you go down to the bottom, in the last few years, we have worked on getting our cash reserves to a good level. This current budget that we're about to look at will only have a $38,000 surplus through the end of fiscal year 2015, which is in September. The next budget, using these rates, would have approximately $23,000 or something. You would have about $657,000 in cash by September 2016. You also have $150,000 cash with 1A for operating, $130,000 capital reserve with 1A, which it has a different purpose, but still it's cash with 1A. You're holding an additional $50,000 on top of the 619. So you have it in various places, $987,000, or will have $987,000 by the end of it. In my mind, that is $832,000 is 6 months. The 7 months that you have, it's 1.5 years of your 1A budget, and it's more than 6 months of your total budget here. And also your total budget continues to shrink. So I don't foresee a useful purpose in you continuing to grow those reserves.
So
I think trying to maintain is sort of the plan now.
Can I throw out just one thought for discussion, because I'm not sure where y'all are on this. Conservation water rates is a very popular topic, and a lot of my districts are implementing that. On y'all's tiers, that 15,000 gallons is a relatively high first tier. And, if water conservation is a goal of this board, you may want to contemplate reducing that amount of water usage, so that the people that use a lot of irrigation water are paying a larger portion of the share. I don't know where y'all stand on that, but I'm throwing that out for discussion.
Are you finding that's making a difference anywhere? Because we can only water twice a week now. I can't imagine anybody cutting that back.
It
Most cities
has.
are going once a week.
I know.
It
I know,
has in a
that's
lot of my districts, but we haven't been on the water restrictions. So we have dropped our minimum conservation rate to 10 to 12,000, depending on what kind of homes
Well,
we
but
have.
you then have those people that have all that stuff in their back that they're watering. We don't get to see when it gets hotter. You got to put more water in the pools. So I mean, I would think it would be. Because you're only allowed to water, but you can hand water. Well, somebody could sit out there with their margarita.
I'll be honest, we feel like it
Down the
has
alley.
some impact. One thought is that y'all are a fairly affluent area, that if someone's bill goes up $30 or $40 a month because they're watering to keep their yard green, they're not going to be as sensitive. I don't know, but I'm throwing that out there for discussion, because it's just a trend, and it's something that the state is encouraging and a lot of our districts have embraced.
There's an equity issue there too, in that if people are using a lot of water, then it's pushing up the base rate that everybody's got to pay. So if they're using a lot, they should be paying for it.
Well,
I like the proposal here to reduce the fixed rate. I think it's a really positive thing, and I think it sort of pushes more of the cost to people that are actually using water. So if you're conserving, if there's a retired couple, I think they're paying a fairer share here.
When we looked at your actual usages, and we haven't ran it since 2012, but when we looked at it in 2013 when we looked at it, your 2-year prior history showed a very high average usage.
What was it?
It was up above 15,000.
It was
We had almost every single month, including the winter months, more than 15,000 gallons of
high
usage.
usage.
That's very high
We're
usage.
at 20,
And so,
the average out across the year, 20.
and I don't know if it's because you have much larger houses, if you have a higher occupancy rate, or just a higher, the lifestyle usage. And so I was very surprised to see that much average usage across all of your entities. I would agree with Julianne in that, perhaps you do break up that first tier, and maybe you could match, now all of these rates, just for information, actually match Louisville's, all except for the actual volume tier rate. They match Louisville's rates right now, and including the $13.34 water base.
Okay,
So you're
that's-
saying our charge per 1,000 gallons is matching?
Not that one,
No.
that's the only one. The
But
$3.74
the base
does
rate,
not.
but the proposed base rate would match
The base rate for water, base rate for sewer, the volume usage for sewer, and the trash fee would match Louisville's rates. So the $2.76 is what Louisville's water volume rate is. There's no way you could put that in. It is a very large chunk of your change. Now, if you broke up tier one, maybe you made tier one for the first 8,000 gallons with the $2.76, and then jumped it to the $3.74.
So,
Most of your homes are going to kick into that. They will see some savings now. Two thoughts there is if you do those tier rates now, but you've done this other very large drop, people aren't really going to notice it, so they won't complain about it. But at the same time, for conservation purposes, they won't notice it because it got lumped into another, $31 drop in rates. So if you're trying to spur conservation purposes, perhaps we look at it in the summer, and people are to spend 5 months at these new lower rates. They're like, this is great. And then you hit them with just a conservation rate. And it's like, this is when we want you to pay attention to your usage. And here's where you will feel the sting if you are, abusing your water usages.
Well, I'm thinking on your behalf on that, because I mean, there are certain times of the year you're gonna use a lot more water because everybody's gonna be home.
It's always going to be, it starts
Then,
in about May and goes
you
to
know,
October.
When school's going on and they're not home, it's gonna be,
Yeah, but my water usage is much more driven by landscaping than it is by
Yeah.
putting in a house.
It's always,
Landscaping
it's
dwarfs.
It's-
dwarfs
yeah.
that treatment.
so let me
So-
ask,
Yeah.
so what is the logic behind our current base rate being so high and going so low? How did that happen? for
Well,
it to
we
get so
had
high?
initially tried to tie our rates we actually increased them slightly when we were trying to increase our reserves. We were trying to tie it closer to what 1D or somebody else was doing. But then there was another reason why we wanted the rates higher. And I don't know if it was funding.
Because that's the biggest change I see here, right?
Yeah, and there was something.
I mean, I'm not objecting to it, I'm just trying to understand what was the thinking, why did it get
So
so high? And
I know some of the other directors like that high, some of the other boards, they
Uh-huh.
like it high because it gives a steady income through the year. So even if your water usage declines, the district gets a steady revenue from you
Yes.
through the year. I personally disagree with that approach.
Yeah,
I think
I
it's
agree.
penalizing people who are using very little water.
Well, and the problem with comparing ourselves to D is that D funds their debt repayment through utility rates, not through property tax. And so
say that
by,
again?
they haven't issued
use-
bonds.
They use a portion of revenues to fund their long-term capital reimbursements instead of
Unlike
taxes.
us, right? Or
In
as
lieu
well.
of issuing bonds and
They use-
using,
okay.
and having a portion of their
Taxes.
taxes go towards a debt rate,
Okay,
it's right out of utility funds. They have some bond debt now, and they're also funding faster a reimbursement to their developer. So people are actually paying more now. Now, if you live here throughout the next 30 years, you'll probably see a savings overall because you're not issuing as much bond debt and paying bond debt interest, but you're paying for it now because you essentially have much higher debt repayments than you would if you were issuing standard bonds.
Yeah.
So,
no, I like that, I agree, I mean, I don't know why it got so high,
well,
It's not
and we've
understand
just
is that
had
good, but
almost like a perfect storm of everything coming together in the right way of the bonds refunding. Finally got enough easement revenue to pay off the developer. We have nothing else hanging over our head. We have achieved the cash reserves that I think put us in a nice stable place. And we've seen a good 3 years of solid, reliable budgets. And I think we have a very good idea about going forward what it's going to be and how our communication with 1A is going to be, to where at this point we don't need to be anticipating the sky falling.
So I personally would like to see more work on the volume charge and maybe changing the tiers, going to a smaller, I guess it's tier 2, reducing that. And maybe even going more aggressive on the charging more for people who use more water.
Okay.
So I like the direction you're going. I would like to make one change rather than putting this in and then coming back and filling again.
So
What do you guys think about that?
Yeah.
I agree.
Oh, the tiers.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's
now
great.
they are harder to aim for, so I will have to build in a little bit more cushion to assume for lower usage.
Yeah, you'll have more fluctuation in your revenue.
Whereas right now, if it's a base rate times X number of connections, which are not going to change in your district, maybe by one, then I can almost guarantee what our reserve is going to be. If the only thing that would is if 1A's budget, if they really go over budget or they go under, I anticipate them going under, but I can really dial in your bottom line. You guys have a very reliable. So whereas with the tier, it's so very dependent upon actual usage, and that swings. I mean, when I'm looking at your actual volume, it can be anywhere from 85% of budget to over budget. Generally, it's under budget, even when I'm trying to be conservative in my estimations.
So one
it's
way
under
to
budget.
approach that would be not to be too aggressive with the changes.
Okay.
Leave some pad there, leave room so that in future we can perhaps have a reduction and get.
Yeah, I kind of like Lisa's suggestion and maybe reduce the base rate now. And then come back and revisit this in the beginning of the summer.
So the conservation feels like a conservation rate?
Or,
We can
or
change
in the
this as
al-
many times as we want.
You can change it at any time. You're not
Or even
limited.
if you did
I
it,
would encourage you though. You know, it's
Don't know.
always great to reduce your rates. It's a lot harder to increase them. So, you know, is this base rate reduction too aggressive at this point in time? And do you want to do a smaller reduction now and then come back in another 6 months and look at it?
The
Or-
alternative would be to hold for a month. You know, aim towards that base rate and then look at adjusting the volume charges, adjusting the tiers and see what we think that would do.
So what kind of break are you guys looking at? Would you be comfortable with suggesting if we break up tier 1 into 2 additional?
Which was average front foot on your lots here? 70s, 80s?
I'm sorry.
For us, it's 80.
Yeah.
Which one is current? These are all proposed, right? But these are current.
No, those are your current
That should be,
rates, and yeah.
that should be your current.
Current, okay.
So right now it's the 1 through 15.
So we get 2,000 free and then it's 2 to 15. What do we know anything about averages?
When we looked at our averages 2 years ago, almost every house, every single month was averaging at least 12, closer to 15, which I was very
Is that-
surprised
It's
at.
just amazing.
That's
Everything
just a lot.
around the year.
Because I have,
Annual
and
or
Monthly.
not just the
monthly.
summer?
No, that was
well, no, that
monthly.
was,
Yeah.
is that
Yeah,
before the
it's the
water
whole year.
restrictions were?
Actually, that was the
So-
first year after it happened, and since then, I've continually seen your usage and your usage revenue drop since then. So I anticipate that you do have lower numbers now, but you guys were still probably a good 5,000 or 6,000 over.
And was
other
that year
entities.
during the height of the drought?
That was actually the first year of the restrictions.
So in
Okay.
summer,
It was
would be-
when it was the first year following. Now, a lot of the data, I was doing a 2-year look back, and so a lot of the data did include a period that wasn't part of that. So I can go pull new data, or I can have them try to send me new data and
What
try
would-
to
What
analyze.
would be useful to me, or I guess that is that the 3-4 months, what is the average for those 4 months? Because that's when, right?
The summer months?
The summer months, yeah.
Yeah, and that's what we'd look at that and try to figure out. What I generally try to do is I find a monthly average per connection, and then I do a seasonal average. I average it over these 3 months, and I generally do start and do December through February. That's usually considered winter, and I think that's when your sewer averages is pulled. And then you do 3-month cycles after that, and then I find that average for the year, and then I do a 2-year average there, which would hopefully take into consideration variances in seasonal, extra hot, extra cold, or extra water, extra rain, stuff like that.
I remember when we had the SB guys come in, the rate of usage was so high, actually, it was alarming. So I went out there, I tried to compare to different districts that were similar affluence, similar patterns and incomes. We were still high, and I was pushing very hard to maybe there's a major leak somewhere. I was assured that that's not possible because they measure the amount used and the amount we buy
When they sent it to
Bill
me,
versus
they
consumption.
sent me the consumption per connection. And I was able to look at it, and I was able to then take those, I took the like account number and I took the consumption, and I was able to sort it to where it had a bottom to lowest, and then I could count how many it was. So it's how many were in this, and I could take the tier breaks in every single month. So I had a by account, by usage, by month, and that's where I could see all that usage. And so I'm like, unless everybody has a leak, then it was just.
Human leaks in the main line.
Yeah, I might have leak in.
Well, see, that's what when you're looking at Phil's report, and if all of a sudden the accountability gets crazy, and then no one else is seeing it on their bills, no one else's revenue is extremely high or over budget, then you think you have a leak. But in this particular case, since I'm getting account number reads, and those accounts are showing so much usage, which is over what I see in other entities, that's where your average was higher. So I can pull fresh data, and we can run that, and I can run some different scenarios. So the base rate will essentially go up, the tier rate will go down. Because the goal here would be is I've taken the budget down to about break even, to very close. It's 38,000 for the end of this fiscal year, 23,000 something. I don't really want to make that number any lower, but at the same time, I'm not trying to make that number much higher. So however we do it, it's going to come out to that. So if this is how I did it the easiest way, I'm going to increase the base water rate. I would reduce the tier rate and try to make it, but people's bills are going to work out the same.
So I'm missing something there.
I
I
can't,
like the base rate we've got.
and then I
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
reduce the tier rate anymore.
No,
or
I
you'll
don't
end
think
up
we
with
should
another
reduce
one.
the tier rate.
Otherwise
Yeah, what I'm saying
Otherwise,
is,
your revenue, I think what we were talking about is reducing the gallonage
yeah,
on the tier rate and creating yet another tier, so you would have
Exactly.
more tiered
Oh.
income
Right, right,
coming
right.
in.
yeah.
Okay.
So I
Keep
mean,
the
I
rates
think
the same, but just penalize for the more usage of the
Yeah.
water.
Okay.
2 to
So
10, and then
stepped
every
right.
10 after that.
Yeah, I see them, and I will tell
Bump
you
up every
for, if y'all have 80-foot lots, then maybe 12 is that first tier. Our districts vary anywhere from 10 to 12, except for my ultra militant ones that don't want anyone to water, and they start tiering in at 8.
Okay. Well,
So
That
you
may be
think-
a shower for a week
Well,
for
we're
me.
given 2 free, so if we're gonna do 12,000, then
what is your tier 2 rate?
which is 424. I don't think we have to solve this now. We've got time constraints.
I'm good.
Okay.
That was a preference, but,
Okay.
definitely out by 715, but preference was 650.
If we wanted to go, now the $2.76 with Louisville, do you like the idea of getting near the Louisville rate if we had a lower, like first, now they go up to, I believe it's 10,000 gallons is their first, like 2 to 10 might be theirs. But if you did like 2 to 6 or 2 to 8, you're probably going to hit most of the houses are going to hit that. But then anyone who's true conservers or smaller homes might stay close to that.
See, I don't
And
think
then
we need worry about changing the volume charge, the lower volume charge. I think we're giving people a really good deal by dropping the base rate down to
That's a
$13.
huge deal.
That's big,
cheap.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then so leave the tier 1 rate where it is. You don't have to reduce it to, you're saying 12,000, 10,000 or 12,000.
Okay. And
And
then,
then look and let's see what that.
and
Well,
then
they
make
get-
the tier 2s
well, they get
kick in sooner.
2,000 for free, so now you just take it up to 10. So technically they're using 12,000, right?
But they pay for it's not just.
No,
No,
it's,
it's-
the
Still
meter
paying
would
for
go,
it.
you'd have to change it that the rate actually read through 12,000
Oh,
gallons.
okay.
And then at 12,001 on the read, it would kick up. So if we did that and you left the tiers, the rates per tier, and all you did was changing the amount of where it broke, we could probably decide that tonight. I could then go back and figure out for forecasting budgets, what kind of impact that would have. I would honestly say that it'll take me to pull the reports and to do all that. I'm not sure it would be worth changing this amended budget for this year because it'll probably be a smaller number, and I can actually go ahead and pull that number as part of your next budgeting process and roll it all together, make it more efficient.
How about if we, create more of them and go by 5, so instead of 15 to 25, go
And that's at
15
your-
to 20.
That's at your
20 to
preference.
25,
If you
yeah.
want to change where the tiers break and the prices, we can do that. I mean, essentially, if you're going up and you're making the tiers break small, all you're gonna do is increase your revenue. And so everything we look at tonight as far as break even, you'd only have more surplus. And so the difference would be is if you decided then on your base rates to go lower than Louisville. I think we'd kind of always like the idea of tying to Louisville because so many people think that they're near Louisville.
Yeah, I
We
wouldn't,
went.
I wouldn't recommend going lower than the city of Louisville. Because, and that could create problems down the road if the
Yeah,
annexation proceeds with Louisville. And then all of a sudden, if our tax rate keeps on dropping and we're dropping our water rate and all of a sudden Louisville actually wants to come in and annex us off the district and people's water and sewer rates will increase and their tax rate will increase, that could create some resistance from the community and,
Well, depending on when
delay the dissolution of this
they-
district.
So the
depending on when
base-
they annex us, maybe we deserve it. Because I want it, it's gotta be earlier rather than later, so I think it's up to them to annex us before that happens.
So the base matches Louisville, right? The base 1334.
Yes, all the base rates here. The only thing that doesn't match is the $3.74.
So what if we change tier 1 to be 2 to 10? And then change all the other tiers. Tier 2 then would be 10 to 20. Tier 3, 20 to 30. Just push that down.
I was thinking kind of the same, along the same
But I was
lines, but I was thinking
thinking
2 to 12 and then 12 to 22, but 10 works, 10 to 12 works. So.
Makes it easy.
The 12 might be a little more easier to swallow right now because I think so many of your homes already exceed that number that they're going to see that volume number go up. So maybe if you do 12 right now, and then maybe when we look at it in the future and we'll try to do some more conservation, we can squeeze a little bit more.
So do 2 to 12, 12 to 22.
Yeah, instead of adding new tiers and trying to figure out what to price on that, just leave them as they are and just
Because a lot of
subtract
people are
3,000
going to
from
get
every
into that,
number
and that
except for
the difference
2,000.
between the 374 and the 424, that's a fairly significant,
Yeah, but we're dropping our base rate.
Yeah, that's what it will get kind of lost in here because you're dropping the bill so much. So unless
People
someone's a real
People are not going to notice. I mean, they are not going to look at these tiers. I mean, I have never seen it before.
most people
Yeah.
don't. And,
So
and
the only thing they feel it by is just their
well, and I
water bill
don't
is high or
think your
lower,
bill
but I
even
don't
breaks
know if
out your various tiers. All it says is volume.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
most people aren't going to even know why the volume goes up or down or what the rates are. It's unless when you guys put it out on the your various social media, you'll be able to tell them, here's why we did this. You're like, we dropped these other ones because you're good taxpayers and you're paying your debt well, and we're
because most people have no idea now. I'm watering twice a week versus once a week. I'm going to go 14,000 or 20,000 or I'm not even.
But most people are seem to be on the social media seem to be questioning the price of HOA. They're not questioning all this stuff.
But it's always cracking up because it's thousands of dollars more in taxes and stuff.
in
Yeah.
Yeah.
this page.
So what I think the proposal in front of us is to do everything that's in Lisa's document here, and then we'll change the rates to be 2 to 12 instead of 2 to 15.
The tiers.
Tiers, yes,
The
tiers.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
And then 12 to 22, 22 to 32.
And
so
then add one more at the end. Or whatever. So
I wouldn't even add one more. I'd just
Oh,
go
just
over,
make it
over
52.
52.
Yeah.
2,000.
So
That,
So
I
you
think that-
reduce the tiers by 3,000.
Yeah, and that would penalize, I think, some of the higher
yeah.
water users.
So we're pushing the numbers to anything over 53 is all of a sudden.
Yes.
I'm shocked by the average water consumption.
Well,
That's getting in Kugel territory there. That's pretty high.
Well, and I mean, and it's when I saw so many houses, I mean, there has to be at least a few people who are just one or two people in the home or whatever, and it's a lot of landscaping now. It'll be interesting to see how that usage worked out 2 years forward. When I have seen your volume reducing, and I do calculate your budget by that average usage, by the month, by the 2-year average, by the seasonal average, and then
And you're
forecast it
comfortable, we have
to-
enough padding if we go into drought with major water restrictions this summer?
their water restrictions are already pretty high as it is.
Okay.
And then with the drought, because the issue we've had, I mean, it would have to completely die off. And
Some of the surrounding areas are once a month.
Uh-huh.
well, that's a lot of my districts are in actually the in that area. And so we have Mustang, not so much because they actually get their water from Chapman, not from Texoma, but North Texas Municipal, like Forney and all of those, they are experiencing it. So we aren't as volume heavy on that. We do have to have a higher base rate because we just set that. But it's for those reasons that I generally don't tie so much of my budgets to the base rate, especially in young districts. But in your case, because you're older, because you're on like the more sunsetting side of your bills are actually kind of shrinking, and I think it's manageable. So we'll keep an eye on it and make sure. but you would have to really drop off.
And you would hope with all of this development in 1F, 1G, and 1H coming on, that 1B's percentage of the overall expenses would decrease. It has to.
It has to.
If it
With all that
doesn't, then
commercial-
we have bigger issues.
I mean, we might have one more year of it bad, but there's only going to be so long. And especially if
That's a tremendous amount of
this
tax
developer
base that's
doesn't
about to
own
hit.
those properties, you can't protest them with your friends up at the Denton CAD to get lower values if you don't own the property. All those individual property owners are not going to be able to fight that battle, and those values will hit at market and they will be high.
Let me ask
So,
a pragmatic question about the banding here. So I remember years ago, we were told the system they used didn't allow for different rates. We fought that, and finally we won that, and it still, I guess it does. Do we have the same bands right now, just charge different rates for the bands? I'm wondering, is the system capable of saying, one, you want to have 3 tiers at 10,000 each, you want to have 9 tiers at 500 each? Is the system here capable of doing that?
I think it might have a maximum of like 15 tiers, might be that all the software
Per
is capable
district?
of doing. Well, it's a software related issue is that, and this is a utility billing software. Generally, you don't see more than, I think what you guys have is kind of on the higher end of
Yeah,
getting
usually
crazy.
we have 3 to 4
3 to 4.
tiers on
Sure.
average.
So that was my question, though, is that they have
Are
one
we-
billing system here, and we got 8 districts. Can
Actually,
they split those up and say District 1 has 3
I
tiers, District 4
think
has 9
they
tiers?
bought a module that actually bills you guys separately, which is how you can generate your separate utility billing reports. I believe they had to start looking at you as separate districts when they expanded the system a few years back. But I think within that system, when for any particular account, they only have so many spaces that can do different tiers. So you might,
I guess it's problematic, we'll find out.
I mean, honestly, if that were the case, then I would say that your super high tier there, you could probably just, I don't know.
That's what
figure
I say,
out
if we had to back into it
something
and play
in the middle.
nice, we could just say, well, we'll keep the same tier, we'll just charge different.
I mean, I
rates
think
per
if you're
tier.
using more
Yeah,
than
get rid of tier,
56,000 gallons, you at that point really don't care.
yeah.
I mean, you really don't.
Mhm.
It's,
So do we need a vote on this?
Yes.
I was
we
just
do.
also for the tiers, not the base rate. Are we also talking about?
I think it's
commercial?
all of it. I think you're looking at and the commercial I didn't look at. And the reason why is I think you have 2 or 3
Three.
commercial
Yeah,
units.
that's what
They're
I was
not
gonna
even a
say.
budget impact.
There's so little
So the
commercial
Part
in
of pie,
this district.
yeah.
Your HOA, you're gonna raise the HOA's water bill and the HOA's gonna turn around and raise your water bill. I don't know if that necessarily benefits
How
you.
much do we have in our district?
You have that one little restaurant on the corner
Yeah.
that sat vacant in the whole shopping center over
Pie,
here.
yeah.
That's apparently yours.
High
And
tiers.
then
Just that one?
you have you have a total of 11 various commercial connections. You have the community center, whatever that's called over there.
Okay.
I think the school is in your district.
Yeah.
I
Probably
think you have that one business building, and I want to say there might be another commercial building within here that might actually one of
Is
these
that
businesses might belong
Primrose
to you.
School and ours too?
No, I
I
don't
think
think
it's
the ones
on
up
the
front
district.
are in yours. I think those are actually private.
I mean, the one that's not Primrose, but that.
Oh,
Kitty
they just
Academy?
closed?
No,
Kids-
that's
Kitty.
in 1D.
Yeah.
Oh, it closed?
Yeah, closed.
Did?
Huh. All
Yeah,
that
they're not just one of
fighting.
the gym used to, right?
No, no,
No,
no,
no, no.
no.
Oh,
Oh,
no.
this one over here, okay. I'm
Yeah, the Montessori,
Yeah.
no, the,
I would say that just opened. Like,
sorry.
like
Whoa.
less than a
I
year
know,
ago.
I was
The
like,
Kumar.
I was like, I
So-
think the argument over the fire lane lasted longer than.
So we're gonna leave the commercial rates where they are, and we'll just adjust
That's
it.
my recommendation. They don't really impact the budget, you're probably only impacting yourselves.
So I'd like to propose a motion to adopt these rates.
Second.
I agree.
All in
So, so then we can go to our budget for this year, or I can continue kind of showing you how this budget this year and next year's budget actually work. Or do you guys want to just look at this year's budget and call it good? Assume that I can do some math.
Can I get, Guy, do you have a good handle on what we discussed? There's so many numbers advanced on that, I got a little confused.
I'll
and
make a
lost.
copy of this, of Guy's notes, and I'll circulate that around.
Okay,
So it's everything that was in the proposed rates
Okay.
page on there, except for you guys additionally changed was the tier for the $3.74. You took it from 15 to 12, and then you took tier 2 back up to 12 rather than starting at 15.
5 becomes 2, basically.
So
Half
the
becomes two.
$13,
Except for this.
and I can recap it, Patrick, and email it to you guys to the
Yeah.
I
website.
think probably what I'll do is.
So everything just dropped
for the
3,000.
Social media, I'll just say, we're looking at this average savings $30 per household, not worry about the vans.
Per month, yeah. So it's gonna be a fairly significant amount.
I'll leave all the details out, and just say
This
this
is
is
the 5.
on average,
Like
like
2,000, not about 3,000.
So the only other thing that I think you guys will like to look at is if you
Tuesday,
wanna,
five.
Proposed language I made.
Sure, absolutely.
So you don't get into trouble.
if you wanna flip 2 pages, it'll be page 65 of 67 in the PDF. And this is for your information on per household, kind of where your money is going. The far column is the reduced rates,
I'm sorry, what page are you on?
65 of 67, just flip to,
Okay, thank you.
and up at the top, you can see there you adopted those new rates, so the far column is how this is gonna work out. The usage of 15 gallons, obviously, since we changed the tier, that number will be slightly higher. But you can see that $380 on average, you can see how that's working out. Now we drop down below, we can see here your average home value straight off of your certified values last year. Louisville's, the ISD, the Denton County, City of Louisville's current tax rate is 43.6086 as a rate. You have your current 84 cents. Next year, your forecasted total rate, 76.21, based on the number that I'm fairly certain Louisville will assess us as our 95% of next year's debt needs. And then you'll keep the exact same portion going towards your budget, the 520,000 or whatever it is this year. So that number, okay, so that number gives the most benefit to your homeowners, because then by keeping it in taxes, they get to write that off, versus if it's utilities, you don't write that off. And then they went from averaging $12,205 in utilities and property taxes down to $11,548. So it's going to be a total of like 700 and something homeowners are going to see, because it's a combination of your refunding, combination of us finally reaching our reserves and getting a good hold on the budget, getting it under control, wrestling it under control.
And when you put that with the water rates, we're looking at potential savings of about $1,000 a year.
No, that
It's about
includes-
700 something.
That includes that?
Yeah, that includes
So
that.
it's utility, then.
Okay.
Yeah, the tax portion, the utilities is about 380 and the tax portion's right at 300. So it's like $680, $700. And then your current tax debt rate would actually be about 56 cents. So because you have an exemption, Louisville has no homestead exemption. They don't. And I looked at that like 3 times, because I was like, really? I was like, that is weird for a city to not have a homestead.
45-cent tax rate.
Well, that's what they do. But normally what happens is that you keep your tax rate slightly higher, give the homeowners the break through the homestead exemption, giving them a net effective lower rate, and then let the commercials pay a higher rate. Whereas here, the commercial is essentially getting a lower rate and the homeowners have a higher effective rate because they have no homestead exemption. So their tax rate is actually commercial beneficial rather than, but maybe they're trying to bring in more commercial business. So even though you have an 84-cent rate, it is effectively a 71.4 overall rate with your exemption, because it's so high. If at your 76 rate, you'll actually have effectively a 64.78% tax rate.
Wow.
So you have this higher rate, but your big exemption amount, since all you have is homes, it's essentially you're almost keeping your rate higher when it doesn't need to be. So like if you guys decided to drop the whole exemption thing, you could plummet that rate and it would still come in with the same dollars. Now, to get a parity with your 15% exemption, you would have to have a 51.305 tax rate. That would mean no M&O go into your budget. We'd have to eliminate like $500,000 of expenses for that to happen. But your debt rate will be, until you pay off your debt, higher than that 51 cents. So you won't be able to get your tax rate equal to Louisville's prior to your debt being paid off, unless you do serious budget shaving. Now that remains to be seen how the percentages are going to work out. Or you
Budget
start-
shaving, but we don't control our budgets.
Well, you don't control a lot of it. So unless you find a way to, chunk out some big amounts, and I'll look, and the whole permit department isn't going to do it. So It's 63,000 in the right direction, but it's not the whole thing. So now I will say your administrative permits, landscaping, and then all of your consulting expenses is nicely $550,000. So all that went away. You would more than cover and be at Louisville's rates for water, sewer, drainage, and streets.
So what I'm hearing from you is that, we're pretty much fully built out. And we have, after this next year, there's no probably sizable tax rate reductions until we pay off our debt, unless we drastically cut our M&O. Is that what I'm hearing?
The only way I think your tax rate will really go down is if you decide to do away with a good portion of your exemptions.
Yeah, well, I'm taking that.
So that the rate goes down, but then the exemptions went away, the net effects of taxes are the same.
The exemptions pretty much offer no benefit to y'all because y'all have no commercial tax base.
It was beneficial back when the people doing the 1A budget were using the wrong number to figure out the percentage, but we clued them into that, so that might not happen again. So that being said, you can look, the last two pages, 66 and 67
Sorry, a quick
are,
question on, sorry.
yes.
On the sewer rate, were we changing that to 8 even or 820? Because on the 2 pages earlier,
It's going to be the one that's in blue, the 820,
820, okay,
which is kind of goofy, but yeah.
thanks.
Sorry, yeah. So my number there,
Yeah, I was just,
your bill's going to be $5 higher for you.
ooh, that's,
To blue it all, it's no good there. Okay. Does that make sense? And that helps. And so your homeowners would be like, yeah, we found you $700 for you. Vote for us next year. Okay, so budget for this year. We're going back to page 59. You did everything for the rate order, and everything else on that was just for information. So now we're going back to agenda item number 6. Is that right?
Thank you. Yes, item number 6.
This is on page 59 of the tablet. And it looks like this. If for any reason you're at the end of the tablet and you see the words forecasted at the top, on the side, and the one that says not for adoption, you're on the wrong budget. You want this one that says here in red, amended. Or in blue, sorry, blue. Or purple if you're my Xerox machine that apparently can't. It's a little colorblind. But yeah, if you see one that says forecasted like this, that's not the other one. That is actually next year's forecasted budget with the same expenses this year with those rates in there. So you can see that you're actually not going to be like digging this big hole. I did forecast that. Okay, so looking at this amended budget, basically all that happens is the utility rates go down. We go from having 1.314 million in revenue down to 1.181. That takes effect in March because I figure it's February. Your March 1 billing, which might even be April 1, would be the first time you'd see that roll out. So that's for the last 6 months of this fiscal year. Everything else remains the same. What I did change is 1A apparently had we adopted this different budget, but never made it to you. It changed your number slightly. It was like $20,000 total, higher. So I did put those numbers in here. So we're actually capturing those 1A actual final FOMB numbers. And you do see your rates reiterated down there at the bottom. The 1334, the 820, the 330. What won't be in here is that the additional revenue from the tier rate, but that will give me time by the time we set our budget in August, September, we can pull that number in. So you'll have an additional revenue from that, but I wouldn't expect it to be a tremendous amount, but it will be something. None of your consultant expenses, I'm not expecting that to change. The only difference between on the second page, the 548 and 552 were again the allocation, and the change that happened from the 1A final budget is they went back and allocated the tax percentage based on actual assessed values, not on what they were taking as the net taxable value. They were actually using a lower number for you, we talked about last month, than was accurate per the agreement. And then this last page here is your cash flow showing how this, still $38,000. And what I haven't added in here is the approximately $30,000 of additional reserve revenue, which will be available to add into the 619,000 once we hit every dollar we need to pay the developer back.
So it's approximately 30,000 franchise.
Approximately 30,000. So, that being said, this is the amended budget, which would take effect.
So you need a motion?
I think
for
you do,
this?
yep, to approve this.
So a motion to approve the budget as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
So were those numbers lower than you guys were wanting?
And was that India that seconded?
Sorry, what was the question? What did you ask?
I was, because I'm like, when I was running it and I'm like, I don't see a reason, like the accountant in me is like taking it from $33 to $13. I was like, really?
That's
And so I'm like inching them down and inching them down. I'm like, what the heck? And I go and I throw Louisville's numbers in there and I'm like, so then I took it to the next year and I'm like, it works for 18 months. And I'm like, and I don't see a reason. I don't want to keep incurring reserves unnecessarily.
That's great, because we actually, when we did the water petition, we looked and we said, why are we the same as Carrollton and Colony, and they were all half what we were. So I think that's huge progress.
Well, and the biggest issue there is it, really depends on how old your system is.
Mhm.
When you come in here and you have to buy so much new stuff to serve such a small number of connections, it's going to be huge until you have the number of connections to erode it. And you have so many years have gone by. But this is what the residents who've been here the whole time should be getting the benefit of.
Yeah.
Be like, we've paid,
Yeah.
we've
We've
paid.
been subsidizing all the other development, so it's our time to.
It's our, and that's where, you don't keep paying, and I honestly believe that you would probably still be paying those higher rates and subsidizing everyone else had you guys not taken that proactive,
Absolutely.
You would have never seen your budget continually dropping and maintaining your categories the way they have.
Yep.
So it would have just spiraled. So, but I think you're in a good position now to keep maintaining the allocations that we have now and maybe even getting further inroads on other items. But for right now, we can control this.
Great.
And it's only going to look better for you guys.
I'm just shocked 1D's not following up on y'all's heels.
Well, and I mean, if you had Bruce, I was requested to submit a engagement letter to them, and I was actually requested by John to send additional information on specific items that we could work on, all the various other little things. I've never heard back from them, but it isn't something that they do discuss. I think they hold a lot of faith that 1A can hopefully help make that happen. Now, I think that structure of how aggressively they're paying down their developer liabilities is one of their driving forces right now. That they're basically just throwing every dollar they can. I mean, they're paying $700,000-800,000 out of operating on top of their debt. Yeah. And so that's not a small amount. And, they won't at the end have the developer debt. They will have paid overall, higher debt, but that's kind of like, when you're 25 getting a 10-year note on your house, you're going to be extremely broke until you pay that house off. And so they're, the current residents pay that.
I mean, there's some free rider with this, I'm sure. I think, they don't have to hire you guys because we've already hired you. Now they can say, well, look what those guys are doing over there in 1B. Why can't we do the same thing here with Phil and Austin? So I think it's probably not a bad thing.
And I would think that they would. And I don't know if, rate amendments have been something that they wanted to do for a long time. It makes sense for a lot of districts to want to try to keep similar rates. But I found that with most of my entities, and once about 7 or 8 years goes by, you can't keep the young ones and the new ones at the same rates. And it just doesn't. And I'm like, I'm sorry if you think that it helps, it hurts home sales. I don't think it does. But, because I'm like, no offense, but I don't think people really.
Nobody knows there are 8 different districts. Here they come and say, what's the tax rate? They're going to assume it's that for all.
I think if you were to put this out there, people are like, I don't spend $12,000 and then I'm like, you do. You may not even notice that tax bill's so high.
But people complain about $700 for the HOA. That's you're real up in arms about that.
Well, you just found your $700. Be like, pay your HOA due. You're
There you
getting
go.
it back.
Yeah, I like that.
If you didn't pay your HOA bill,
Still,
we just gave you your HOA dues.
that's great. Yeah.
Move to 1A.
Be
Yeah, really.
like, be like, and we didn't increase the HOA utility rate, so.
Can we get a motion on the tax collection report real quick? We didn't get that.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
I,
Okay, we've talked about 9. We've done the rate order. Guy, can we go into executive session?
Yes, what does it take for us to do that?
It's just a motion to go in, and Lisa's fine to stay. You don't need to leave.
Okay.
So, but can you take us off of that?
So I'll propose a motion to go into executive session. Need a second? All in favor?
Okay.
And normally you would actually, any consultants